you said there that you or whoever it is as an individual know what's best for you, but I struggle with that sometimes. Like, I'm 21 years old. I've barely lived any life compared to, like, for example, my parents are much older, experienced much more. So how do I know what's best for me when I've got like no experience relatively?
That's an interesting question. I guess what I would say is nobody else can tell you what your values are. And the way that you gauge your values is first you look at your role models and you ask of the people you look up to, what are the things they all have in common? And usually that leads you to a clear list of values. So when I did that exercise, every single person I looked up to was an exemplar of generosity, humility, integrity, and curiosity. And I'm like, okay, those are principles for me. Those are things that I want to stand for. I think that's the first step. I think a second step then is, you try out an activity or, you imagine having made a decision and you ask yourself, does this feel like me? And in some cases, the answer is yes. In others, the answer is no. Now, other people are great sources of insight on that. And I think they can expand your perspective, but they can't give you the answer at the end of the day because they don't know what it feels like to be you.
Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, because the issue with myself is I get in this trap of being too stubborn. So how
Welcome to the club.
Smart people problem.
Overconfident people problem.
Exactly, that's what it is. So how do you balance like having conviction in your ideas and taking input, but still believing that this path is right for me or what I'm saying is what is the best thing to do versus being humble and having that humility to know that, okay, these opinions might be very beneficial or they might even be better than what I'm saying?
Well, I think you want to have the right kind of doubt. You don't want to doubt yourself. You do want to doubt your ideas. I think, questioning whether you are a capable human being is not a helpful exercise. Wondering whether you're making false assumptions or you're going down a path you might regret, that's important. And I think a lot of people don't do enough of it. So one of the things one of the things that came out of my many office hours failures was encouraging students to do checkups. Like, how you go to the doctor even when nothing's wrong? Yeah. Well, why don't we do that in our lives too? So the thought was, and I had a bunch of students try it and come back and say, this is really helpful. So I'm now a fan. And actually there's some research on it as well that suggests this is a good thing to do in your romantic relationship, is you put a reminder in your calendar, let's say twice a year, to check in on whether your decisions and actions are aligning with your values. And let's say it's a career checkup. You could be asking yourself, is the major that I've taken in school or, the job I'm pursuing, is it living up to the expectations that I had when I started? If I knew then what I know now, would I still have gone down this road? And if the answer is no, it might be time to rethink your direction. You could ask yourself, is this the lifestyle I want? Are my choices giving me the amount of free time and autonomy that I'm hoping to have? And in that process, I love having a challenge network, which to me is the opposite of what most of us go to, which is a support network. When you're struggling with a decision or you're not sure what to think, you go to your biggest cheerleaders, the people who are going to have your back. And the problem is that they basically reinforce your existing convictions. A challenge network does the opposite. That's somebody who holds up a mirror and helps you see your blind spots more clearly. And when I do checkups, I'll reach out to a few people who are good at getting me to rethink things. And I'll say, okay, first of all, just tell me something that I do or think that you think I should rethink, which is a mouthful of a sentence. But what's something I should question? And I collect input that way. And then I'll run by them a couple of specific ideas I'm considering and say, turn this upside down for me. What might I be wrong about? And we always end up discovering after we've made a decision that there's something that we got wrong. I would rather identify that up front and avoid the mistake than have to learn from it on the back end.
What happens if you go to them, you ask them that, and they're like, everything you're doing is wrong? You need a complete 180.
Well, now you have a critic instead of a cheerleader. And what you want is a coach. So the research on this is really clear in saying you can get your cheerleaders and critics to be coaches if you ask them for advice instead of feedback. You instead of asking them, okay, like what feedback do you have, where they'll tell you either what you did right or a lot that you did wrong. You say, what advice do you have? What guidance can you offer me on what I can do better next time? They get more specific, they get more actionable, they focus on the future instead of the past, and then they become a little more helpful.
So I'm on the opposite spectrum to Wally. I get this imposter syndrome. I've been the student who's gotten, like I was getting D's and E's, and then I made my way up and actually started doing well in school. But then that came with a lot of imposter syndrome. And, my life has been quite uncertain, moving countries. And it's just like whenever things would be going well, I would voluntarily make things worse. And I would be like afraid of success. How can one overcome that?
Well, it sounds like you're your own worst enemy.
Yes, yes.
Right.
My teachers would say that I'm like, they have never met someone who's harder on themselves than I was, especially in the past.
It sounds like you're missing some self-compassion. Do you know Kristen Neff's research?
No.
Okay, so she coined the term. She's an education psychologist who has people go through this great exercise that after you do it, it takes about 10 minutes. You get an increase in happiness, a decrease in anxiety, lower tendency to beat yourself up and ruminate about your mistakes, and actually still more growth afterwards. So what in the world could that exercise be? I'm like, I see this research. Tell me, how do I learn self-compassion? What she randomly assigns people to do is just